In the twilight of the small coastal town of Lakeport, lost among the vast expanses of the southern states, in an inconspicuous corner of the old part of the city, there was a restaurant, Northern Star. This establishment was known for its home-cooked dishes, cozy atmosphere, and, what is important, its unusual history. Behind the counter, almost unnoticeable to a casual visitor, worked a man who at first glance seemed to be an ordinary, modest waiter. However, few people guessed that behind this appearance was hidden Keanu Reeves himself, the same actor whose career was shrouded in an aura of legends, and whose personality was a mystery to millions of fans around the world. Keanu had long ago decided to leave the spotlight and bustle of Hollywood. After years of filming movies filled with spectacular stunts and big premieres, he was looking for refuge in the mundane. In Lakeport, he found not just a refuge, but an opportunity to redefine himself. Each workday began for him with an early rise and a long drive to the Northern Star. In the quiet of the Dawn City, he thought about his plans for the future, remembered the days when life seemed bright, but he could no longer tear himself away from the thought that the real meaning of life lies not in fame, but in simple human actions. Keanu, hiding his celebrity under a thick hat and casual jacket, gradually fit into the restaurant's team. His colleagues did not notice anything unusual about him. He behaved modestly, always smiled, and helped those in need. Over the years of working in the entertainment industry, he learned to appreciate every moment of life, and now his goal was to convey this understanding to others. In his eyes, you could see a mixture of fatigue and hope, a reflection of the difficulties he had experienced, which made him stronger. He often reflected on the fact that even the smallest act of kindness can change someone's fate. On a cold autumn evening, when the wind from the sea brought the smell of salt and dampness, Keanu watched as the rain began to quietly drum on the old stained glass windows of the restaurant. Inside, despite the fatigue after a long day, a warm, almost magical atmosphere reigned. The walls, decorated with old photographs of the city and local landscapes, told stories of years gone by. From time to time, the faces of regular guests flashed behind the counter, to each of whom Keanu gave his smile and words of support. This evening, things were different than usual. At a table by the window, away from the main flow of customers, sat a middle-aged man in a worn leather jacket. His eyes were tired, and his hands were shaking slightly, as if he had just experienced something inexplicable. Keanu, noticing how the man was struggling to hide from the rain behind a closed door, approached without hesitation and offered to help. He invited the stranger to sit at a separate table, where he could warm up and gain strength. The man reluctantly accepted the offer, and over a cup of hot tea they began a casual conversation. During the conversation, it became clear that his name was Robert, and he had just lost his job after a series of personal setbacks. His life was on the brink, and it seemed like everything around him was falling apart. Keanu listened attentively, nodding and looking sympathetically into Robert's eyes. There was not only genuine concern in his voice, but also a conviction that even the darkest times could give way to light. The conversation evolved into more than just pleasantries. Keanu spoke of his own trials, of how he too had once felt lost and hopeless. He shared stories filled with the pain of loss and unexpected encounters that eventually helped him find faith in the future. Robert, listening to him, began to believe that life can also present happy surprises, even when it seems that all is lost. While the rain continued, the restaurant was filled with an amazing atmosphere of mutual understanding and warmth. Keanu knew that such moments can change not only the life of one person, but also touch the hearts of those around him. He understood that behind each case there is a whole universe of human stories, and each of them deserves attention. It was at this moment, when the destinies of two strangers intertwined in the warm atmosphere of the Northern Star, that he felt how an invisible thread of goodness can connect people, give hope, and open new horizons. Outside the window, the city continued to plunge into twilight, and in the restaurant, life acquired a special meaning. Keanu, leaving behind the shadow of the past and striving for a bright future, could no longer imagine his life without this quiet revolution of small good deeds. He understood that even the most inconspicuous moments can become the starting point for great changes, and deep in his soul, the thought was already emerging. This evening will be the beginning of something truly significant. After the evening at the Northern Star ended, Keanu was left with mixed feelings. On the one hand, he felt an inner satisfaction from helping Robert. On the other, he realized that the reality of his new identity in Lakeport was full of challenges that required special attention. The next day brought with it not only the first rays of sunlight breaking through the thick morning haze, but also new encounters that made him think about the price of kindness and how sometimes the most noble deeds can have far-reaching consequences. Keanu's morning began with a leisurely stroll along the coast. The sea air, filled with the scent of freshness and a slight salty note, seemed to wash away the remnants of sleep and anxiety. He walked slowly along the damp sand, reflecting on how his life, deprived of its former pomp, had turned into a series of quiet but meaningful moments. Each new day seemed like a gift to him, for which he should be grateful, despite all the difficulties. But in this calm there was always a hint of uncertainty, a shadow of the past, which reminded him that life does not always go according to plan. Keanu didn't know that this day would bring him many unexpected encounters and trials that would test his determination and ability to bring light to the hearts of others. Returning to the Northern Star, he felt the familiar atmosphere of the establishment fill with new colors. Colleagues who noticed his early return exchanged glances full of surprise and respect. His action last night became the subject of quiet conversations, and the genuine compassion shown towards Robert enveloped him in an aura of mysterious kindness. Waiting for him behind the counter was a young waiter named Marcus, who had been trying to prepare the restaurant for the first customers since early morning. Marcus, without hiding his admiration, spoke about how rare it was in our time to meet a person ready to do such bold things. Keanu listened to him, but his eyes were deeply thoughtful. He understood that by becoming part of this small community, he took responsibility not only for his own life, but also for the lives of those who daily sought solace in the simple joys that the restaurant could give. During the day, Keanu faced another test that showed how difficult life in a small town can be. One lunch hour, an old man with a sick look, rumored to be a former sailor who had survived more than one storm, burst into the restaurant. His face, covered in wrinkles and imprints of years lived, seemed to tell a whole story of loss, betrayal, and unfulfilled dreams. At first, he looked like just another customer, but when he began to tell his story, there was such pain and fatigue in his voice that even the most steadfast hearts began to tremble. The old man, introducing himself as Henry, told of how his life had changed dramatically after he lost everything he held dear. His wife, his home, even his ship, which had become a symbol of freedom and dreams, had disappeared like a mirage, leaving only emptiness and the cold pain of loneliness. Henry told of how he had sought solace in the vast expanses of the ocean, hoping that the waves would wash away his sorrow, but only tripled it, reminding him that life is not only a battle for survival, but also a fight with your own demons. Keanu listened to every word, nodding heartfeltly and occasionally interjecting a few words of encouragement. There was not only sympathy in his voice, but also a deep understanding. Because he himself had once faced adversity and loss, old Henry turned out to be the very symbol of stubbornness and perseverance, who even in the most hopeless situations continued to believe in a bright future. His story filled the restaurant with a special atmosphere. In each of his words you could hear an echo of a dream that, despite everything, did not fade away. For Keanu, this story became a reminder that every person, regardless of age and life circumstances, deserves a second chance. It was at such moments that he thought about how important it is to be close to those who have lost hope, who have forgotten what it means to dream. Despite his desire to hide from the spotlight, Keanu felt his kindness spread beyond the restaurant. People came not only for the food, but also for a piece of the warmth he unwittingly radiated. Throughout the day, conversations about him and his actions surfaced all over the city, from older residents to young students seeking answers to how to survive difficult times. With each new story, with each word of gratitude heard, Keanu realized more and more that his life here was taking on new meaning. However, behind the external idol there were hidden personal experiences and uncertainty about the future. Every meeting with visitors, every story he heard seemed to remind him that goodness does not always find a response in this world. Often, walking through the narrow corridors of the restaurant, he saw a slight touch of fatigue, doubt, and hopelessness on people's faces. But it was in this contradiction, between external calm and internal storms, that Keanu sought an answer to the question, is it possible to maintain faith in the best, despite the constant trials of fate? One such story was an encounter with a young woman named Emily, who came to the restaurant determined to start a new life. Emily, who had found herself in Lakeport after losing her job and breaking up with her past, was looking for a place to regain her strength and find support. Her eyes, full of sadness and hope, quickly found a response in Keanu's heart. He saw in her a reflection of his own wounds, and at the same time, a spark that could light a new fire in her life. Emily told him how her dreams were shattered by circumstances, how each new day seemed like a struggle for survival, and how she lacked confidence in the future. Keanu listened to her, as if giving her a piece of the support that he himself once found in people. These meetings, filled with the bitterness of loss and the freshness of new beginnings, gradually formed a mosaic of life in a small town, where everyone had their own story, their own wounds, and their own dreams. Keanu understood that each of these stories was not just a story of pain or loss, but a testimony of the strength of the spirit, that even in the darkest corners of the soul you can find a spark of light. He saw how people, coming to Northern Star, were looking not only for consolation, but also for answers to the questions that troubled their hearts. And in this search, he himself became a guide, someone who knows how to give warmth without expecting anything in return. The day was drawing to a close, and the soft sunset turned the Lakeport sky gold and crimson. Keanu sat at the empty table, reflecting on the events that had happened, and he realized that each new day brought not only challenges, but also a chance to start over. His thoughts returned to his conversation with Henry, to Emily's stories, and to all the people whose lives had crossed his along the way. Each of them, no matter their pain or loss, carried within them the hope that could be the beginning of something beautiful. That night, as the city gradually fell asleep, Keanu sat in a small room rented on the outskirts of the center and wrote in his diary. His entries were not just a story about the events of the day, but a reflection of his inner world, where memories, dreams, and quiet hopes for the future were mixed. He wrote about the importance of not losing faith in yourself and others, how even the smallest act of kindness can light a flame in the heart of another person. Each line of the diary was filled with sincerity, and each thought, with the realization that goodness can be a force that can change the world. Keanu knew that new challenges, new encounters, and perhaps new wounds lay ahead. But he already knew, life, like the sea, is full of surprises. Even when a storm rages around, in the depths of the water you can always find a calm place where light breaks through the waves. His soul was determined not only to survive all the hardships, but also to give the opportunity for goodness to grow in this small but amazing corner of the world. Every moment he lived became a brick in the foundation of his new life, where he, remaining Keanu Reeves, continued to create history in which goodness and compassion played the main role. And so the day ended, leaving behind a sense of quiet triumph and the belief that even in the most difficult circumstances, one can find a reason for hope. Keanu closed the journal with a feeling of deep satisfaction, realizing that his journey was only just beginning and that there were still many unsolved chapters ahead of him, full of life, pain, and, most importantly, sincere human warmth. The next day, the town of Lakeport awoke to the sounds of a rainy morning, the sky once again shrouded in gray haze, as if sensing the changes that were about to unfold in the lives of its residents. Keanu Reeves, feeling the depth of his new experience, woke up earlier than usual to enjoy a rare moment of solitude and silence. His mind, overwhelmed by the events of the previous day, continued to flow from one story to another, like an endless stream of memories filled with pain and hope. In his heart, there was not only determination, but also a certainty that it was in days like these that the opportunity for true transformation lay. After morning coffee brewed in the small kitchen of the rented room, Keanu decided to go to the Northern Star again. He walked along the streets, watching the city slowly awaken from the night twilight, and felt that today something would be different, something that would turn his world upside down. His steps were light, and his gaze was directed to the future, in which each new person could become a source of change. It was on the threshold of the restaurant that he was met by Margaret, the owner of the establishment, a woman with wise eyes, who over the years managed to turn the Northern Star into a place where everyone found comfort and support. Margaret was like a keeper of the ancient secrets of this little corner of Lakeport. Her voice, warm and deep, like the rustle of the wind in the trees, immediately inspired trust in those who needed advice. She noticed that Keanu was especially thoughtful that day, and, offering to help him, invited him to a table in a small cozy room where the walls were decorated with old photographs that captured the best moments of the city's history. It was here, over a cup of hot tea, that they began to discuss the fates of those who lived in Lakeport and share thoughts about how even the smallest act of kindness can change the course of events. At that very moment, a young writer named Jason showed up at the restaurant, looking for inspiration for his new book. He had heard of Keanu's good deeds and wanted to capture in words the magic that could awaken people's hearts. Jason sat nearby and listened attentively to the conversations, trying to find that spark that would make his work alive and real. His gaze often crossed with Keanu's, and in them one could read a sincere belief that every person who has experienced hardship can find a new beginning. It was at that moment that an invisible thread was tied between them, connecting the past with the future, like a harbinger of great achievement. Keanu spoke of his encounters with Robert, Henry, and Emily, how each of them carried a world of pain and a light of hope within them. His words were full of sincerity and deep understanding, for he himself knew what it was like to endure loss and learn to forgive fate. The conversation flowed smoothly from story to story, and the scent of change hung in the air. Margaret reminded him that even in the darkest corners of the soul, there is light to be found if only we dare to believe in miracles. She shared her observations about the people who came to Northern Star and how many of them sought solace in the simple joys of life, even when it seemed like the whole world was against them. The day dragged on slowly, and a special atmosphere reigned in the restaurant, filled with the expectation of something grand. That day, a new character appeared, Ellen, a young woman with an amazing ability to see beauty even in the most, at first glance, ordinary details. Ellen was an artist who spent her entire life looking for ways to express her feelings through paintings. Her works reflected all shades of the soul, from dark sadness to bright joy. With her presence, she brought an atmosphere of creative magic to the Northern Star that awakened the imagination of each visitor. Ellen told Keanu about a turning point in her life when she lost the opportunity to make art due to life's circumstances, and how meeting a few kind people reopened the door to creative expression. She described how small acts of kindness, even the most insignificant at first glance, were able to restore her faith in herself and in a world where art could be the language of the soul. Her words were heartfelt and sincere, and her eyes sparkled with the light she found in her experiences. Keanu listened with deep attention, understanding that it is precisely such stories that help people not only survive hardships, but also find a new life. Suddenly, the phone rang in the restaurant. Keanu, who was used to life in Lakeport being full of surprises, picked up the phone, not expecting to hear anything special. However, the voice on the other end of the line was so soft and confident that his heart stopped for a moment. It was an old friend he had known since his youth, now working for a charity organization in a large metropolis. The friend informed him that the city was organizing large-scale projects to help people in difficult life situations, and that his organization was looking for people who could make a sincere contribution to change. This news marked the beginning of a new chapter in Keanu's life, filled with opportunities and new challenges. Keanu understood that the opportunity to participate in such a significant project could not only help the residents of Lakeport, but also become a continuation of his path, where each step is measured not by money, but by the light that he brings to the hearts of people. He thought for a long time about how to combine his responsibilities at Northern Star with participation in a charitable initiative, and came to the conclusion that he could try to combine the efforts of the local community with the resources of a large organization. An idea was born in his head about creating a platform where every resident of the city could share their story, find support, and get a chance at a new life. So, a few hours after the phone call, Keanu, along with Margaret, Ellen, Jason, and a number of other interested residents, held a meeting in the back room of the restaurant. At a round table, they discussed how they could organize volunteer initiatives aimed at helping those who were on the brink of despair. The discussions lasted until late in the evening, and each participant contributed a piece of their soul, offering ideas and sharing personal stories about how the smallest support can change a life. The atmosphere of the meeting was permeated with the spirit of solidarity, mutual understanding, and determination, and everyone understood that a path full of new challenges, but also great opportunities, lay ahead of them. In those moments when the discussions were approaching their climax, Keanu felt that his life was once again gaining new meaning. He understood that his presence here, in this small town, was not accidental. Every meeting, every word of support, every good deed formed a single picture that could change not only his fate, but also the fates of hundreds of people. He looked into the eyes of those gathered, and in this look he saw sincerity, hope, and that invisible connection that unites hearts capable of working miracles. The new plan that was being born that night promised more than just help in a difficult situation, but a real revolution in understanding how the smallest contribution of each person can become the beginning of a large movement. Keanu dreamed of uniting efforts, where personal stories and destinies would become building blocks in the construction of a new, fair society in which each person could find support and a chance for a better future. He felt that this undertaking contained the power that could not only change Lakeport, but also become an example for other cities, for entire communities thirsting for change. When the meeting ended and the guests went their separate ways, Keanu was left alone with his thoughts, sitting at a table in an empty room. At that moment, he remembered the words his mentor had once spoken: "The true strength of a man lies not in how much he can get, but in how much he can give." These words, sounding in his mind, seemed to remind him that true greatness is not measured by fame or wealth, but by the kindness and sincerity that he is able to give to the world. Night fell in Lakeport, and the first stars lit up in the dark sky outside the restaurant windows. Keanu felt his soul fill with peace and confidence that his journey was just beginning, and that many more trials lay ahead of him, each of which carried an opportunity for change and a new beginning. He knew that this was not just a chance meeting, but an important turning point in his life, when fate itself extended a helping hand, giving hundreds of people a chance to believe in the best. With this thought, Keanu returned home, filled with new ideas and determination to act. His heart beat in time with his dreams, and every thought became a bridge between the past and the future. He understood that true miracle is the ability to see light even in the darkest corners, and it was with this light that he intended to illuminate not only Lakeport, but the whole world. And so, on this night, under the stars and the whisper of the wind, Keanu Reeves took the first step on what promised to be a great and memorable journey for all who sought hope, true love, and the opportunity to start life anew. With the first rays of the morning sun, the city of Lakeport was waking up from sleep, like an old friend, ready to accept a new day with all its joys and hardships. Keanu Reeves, who had already become an integral part of this small community, felt his inner world filling with fresh energy and anticipation of change. After the events of the previous night, when a fateful meeting took place in the Northern Star restaurant, which brought together many people who sincerely believed in the power of good, Keanu felt that his mission was just beginning. In his soul, the thought was maturing that every meeting, every new acquaintance is not just an accident, but a part of a huge puzzle that will help change the lives of hundreds of people. This time, the morning began for Keanu in quiet reflection as he sat on the porch of his modest home and watched the city slowly awaken. A light fog enveloped the streets, giving them a mysterious look, and the fresh smell of the sea breeze reminded of the endless spaces where every moment was filled with hope. Keanu recalled conversations with the participants of the previous meeting. Margaret, the wise owner of the Northern Star, who always knew how to see the essence of things; Jason, a young writer who sought to capture the beauty of fate in lines; and Ellen, an artist whose paintings reflected the complex shades of the human soul. Every word spoken that evening became a brick in building a new world, where kindness and support could overcome even the deepest wounds. With this new energy and determination, Keanu headed downtown, where new encounters and challenges awaited him. His plans already included projects aimed at supporting people in difficult life situations. A meeting with representatives of a charity organization he had heard about the day before promised to be the first step towards creating a unified platform for helping Lakeport residents. This project, conceived as a unification of the efforts of the local community and external resources, was to become a real beacon of hope for those who were losing faith in themselves. Keanu understood that to implement this idea, he would need not only a talent for uniting people, but also great personal courage to resist the established order and overcome all the obstacles that fate would inevitably prepare on his path. On his way to the city center, Keanu met different people, each of whom contributed their own piece to the overall mosaic of Lakeport life. He saw an old man sitting on a bench near the park, who was telling local children legends about ancient times, when the city was full of magic and adventures. His eyes, full of wisdom and quiet sadness, seemed to open the doors to the past, making listeners forget about everyday worries and plunge into a world of fairy tales and miracles. Keanu stopped to listen to the old man, feeling how the words, spoken with sincerity, penetrated the very heart, reminding that every story has its own value. Soon after, he visited the local library, where he believed not only the information but also the spirit of the town was preserved. There, he met a young woman named Laura, a librarian who had dedicated her life to preserving the history of Lakeport. Laura was a person of extraordinary fortitude, who believed that every word written on the pages of ancient books could bring comfort and hope. She told Keanu about how the library had become a meeting place for many residents seeking knowledge and inspiration, and how she herself dreamed of making this corner of the world more accessible to everyone who yearned for change. Talking to Laura evoked a deep sense of belonging in Keanu, and he realized that each of us plays an important role in preserving the cultural heritage and spirit of a community. Meanwhile, at the Northern Star, the tension was rising. Many customers returned from the previous meeting to share new stories, hoping to find answers to their questions about the future. The restaurant had become not just a place to eat, but a hub for community life, where people sought support and inspiration. Keanu spent time here, not only working behind the counter, but also talking to everyone who came inside. He learned about the hardships that haunted the locals, the dreams left on the shelf, and the small joys that helped them survive. Each story told over a cup of coffee enriched his inner world, making him strive to make this city a better place. One day, in the midst of business discussions, a man with a confident gait and a stern look entered the room. His name was Michael, and he represented one of the large corporations intending to invest in the development of Lakeport's infrastructure. Michael was a man of business logic, but his external sternness did not belittle his internal readiness to listen and discuss the ideas of local residents. He came with a proposal to create a new complex that could transform the city, but his plan was accompanied by the risk of displacing the local population and destroying cultural heritage. Keanu, feeling a responsibility to those who trusted him with their stories and dreams, immediately realized that he faced a difficult task to maintain a balance between progress and preserving the soul of the city. Over the next few hours, the Northern Star became a hotly debated place. The gathering included not only businessmen, but also ordinary citizens, each of whom wanted to express their opinion on how their native place should develop. Keanu, staying away from the heated debates, listened attentively to the arguments for and against the new project. He knew that change was inevitable, but true strength lay in preserving warmth and humanity, not allowing material calculations to overshadow spiritual values. His thoughts were full of determination, and he felt that at that moment the future of many lives depended on his words. In the midst of the discussions, Michael turned to Keanu, who had already earned a reputation as a trusted figure with insight. His voice was steady but insistent. "We are ready to invest in the city, but we want to make sure that no soul is left behind. We are looking for a compromise that can unite the interests of business and the local community." Keanu responded that change must go hand in hand with preserving the identity and historical heritage of Lakeport, that every step must be aligned with the voice of the people. These words evoked a deep reaction from those present, and the atmosphere in the room was filled with a sense of unity as people realized for the first time that change is possible if there is a sincere desire to improve everyone's lives. The evening was slowly falling on the city, painting the sky in the warm shades of sunset. After the intense discussions, Keanu was left alone with his thoughts, sitting in a small corner of the Northern Star, where only the distant echo of conversations could be heard in the silence. He reflected on how many different destinies had crossed that day, how every voice, every word mattered. His heart was filled with hope, but also with the understanding that there were still many obstacles to overcome on the path to change. He remembered the words of his mother, whom he lost in early childhood. Don't be afraid to dream, for dreams have the power to transform the world. These words became a kind of guiding star for him, showing the way even in the darkest nights. He imagined a future where Lakeport was being transformed, where every person, regardless of social status or life's difficulties, found their place in the sun. Keanu dreamed of Northern Star becoming a symbol of a new beginning, a place where souls meet, ready to share warmth, support, and faith in the best. He had already seen how his efforts united people, how, thanks to joint efforts, they managed to overcome differences and build a future where every life is valuable and unique. That night, when the stars shone over the city, Keanu went for a walk along the coast. The sound of the waves slowly rolling onto the shore reminded him of the eternal cycle of life, where after every sunset the dawn is inevitable. In his soul, feelings of joy and anxiety were mixed, because new challenges awaited him, requiring courage, wisdom, and endless faith in the power of good. He knew that every decision made, every sincere conversation, every small act could change not only his life, but also the destinies of those who trusted him with their dreams. Keanu promised himself that he would not stop there, that he would continue to look for ways to bring people together, to preserve the warmth of human relationships even in the midst of rapid change. His heart beat in unison with the rhythm of the city, and he believed that together they could overcome any difficulties. That night, under the soft rustle of the surf and the flickering of distant lights, he set a new goal for himself: to make Lakeport a place where every voice was heard, where change would be the result of common work and not the whim of fate. Thus ended another eventful day in the life of Keanu Reeves, filled not only with meetings and discussions, but also with deep personal experiences. His soul, like a reflection of a calm sea, remained open to new ideas and hopes. And although new trials awaited him ahead, he knew that it is in unity and support that the true power capable of working miracles is hidden. The world around was changing, and along with it, the heart of every resident of Lakeport was changing, entering a new stage of life, where kindness and faith in the best became the basis for real change. Several weeks had passed since the first tangible changes began in Lakeport. The city was gradually awakening from old habits, and residents began to feel the power of unity, united by a common goal. Keanu Reeves, whose image has long been a symbol of hope for the locals, continued to work tirelessly, helping people believe in a better future and actively participating in the organization of various charitable projects. His energy, calmness, and determination attracted the attention of not only ordinary citizens, but also representatives of local government, business, and even art. However, with each new step on the path to transformation, new challenges appeared on the horizon, requiring courage and fortitude. On a warm summer day, when the sun was breaking through the clouds, painting the streets of Lakeport in bright shades of golden light, Keanu met with a group of young activists who were determined to change the life of their city. Among them was Amelia, an energetic woman with red hair and a rebellious look, who became one of the leaders of the youth movement New Wave. Amelia believed that change can only come when everyone is ready to take responsibility for their own destiny and the destiny of others. There was a fire in her eyes that could melt the ice in even the coldest hearts. It was this fire that inspired many, and together with Keanu, they decided to join forces to organize a series of public events and meetings aimed at discussing and implementing ideas for the future of Lakeport. The first such event took place in the central square of the city, where a diverse audience gathered under the arches of ancient buildings: elderly residents, students, businessmen, and just people tired of indifference. Keanu, standing on an improvised stage, spoke about the importance of trusting each other and supporting initiatives that can change everyone's life. His speech was heartfelt and sincere. He talked about how small good deeds done with a pure heart can become a spark for a big fire of change. The audience, holding their breath, applauded his every word, and an atmosphere of mutual understanding and hope hung in the air. The event lasted for several hours, and everyone who approached the stage shared their story, dream, or plan for the future. People talked about their difficulties, shared ideas on how to improve the city's infrastructure, create new places for creativity, and even organize educational programs for children and teenagers. Keanu listened carefully to everyone, remembering names, smiles, and even small details of stories, so that he could use them later in his initiatives. For him, Lakeport was no longer just a city on a map. It had become a living organism, where every voice mattered, and every story was part of a single canvas. Soon after this action, a wave of initiatives grew. The local city council began to discuss the possibility of creating a new cultural center that could become a platform for meetings, exhibitions, concerts, and educational programs. Keanu, along with Amelia and other activists, began to act as a mediator between residents and officials. He helped argue the need for change, cited examples of successful projects from other cities, and demonstrated that Lakeport is capable of more. His experience and personal example inspired even the most skeptical officials, who began to listen to the words of the people and realize that society requires change, and this change is possible only with the participation of everyone. Along with his public activities, Keanu did not forget about the personal trials and internal contradictions that sometimes visited his soul. Nights filled with long reflections were replaced by the morning dawn, and each new day brought him not only the joy of communication, but also a feeling of loneliness, as a reminder that the path to true transformation requires sacrifice. In those moments, he remembered his life before Lakeport, the days when the world seemed indifferent to his aspirations and dreams, and then his heart was filled with a special feeling of gratitude for the opportunity to be here, among people who believed in the best. He understood that his task was not just to give words of encouragement, but also to show by his example that change is possible even in the most difficult circumstances. One evening, during a meeting at a local club devoted to discussing community initiatives, Keanu encountered an unexpected confrontation. An influential businessman, George, known for his tough stance on investment and city development, came to the meeting. George was convinced that large corporations needed to be attracted to Lakeport to prosper, and that local initiatives could only hinder reasonable development. His speech was filled with harsh statements, and he bluntly stated, "We cannot allow emotions and utopian dreams to replace real economic interests. Our city needs capital investment, and any intervention that can slow this process must be rejected." These words caused a storm of controversy among those present. Many supporters of the initiative looked at him with obvious distrust, and some even tried to object, but George was adamant. Keanu, calm and collected, stood up and addressed the crowd. "We all want a better future for Lakeport, and that desire unites us. Yes, capital is important, but so is preserving the soul of the city, its traditions, its culture, and the spirit of its people. If we follow only the money, we will lose what makes us human. We can and must find a balance between growth and preserving our roots." His words echoed throughout the room, striking a deep chord with many in the room. Even George paused for a moment after hearing the response, as if considering what had been said. The atmosphere in the room gradually softened, giving way to a dialogue in which everyone could express their opinions without fear of ridicule or rejection. In the days that followed, a real public dialogue began to unfold. Local radio stations began broadcasting interviews with representatives from both sides, and newspapers began publishing articles seeking compromise solutions for Lakeport. Keanu actively participated in these discussions, providing his perspective and demonstrating how economic interests could be combined with the cultural and social needs of the city. He attended meetings, interviewed entrepreneurs, officials, and ordinary residents, gathering information, ideas, and suggestions. His energy was infectious, and soon many began to realize that change was only possible when all sides were willing to listen to each other. Despite all the difficulties, Keanu did not allow himself to rest on his laurels. He organized a series of masterclasses for young people, in which invited experts talked about opportunities for business development, social initiatives, and creative projects. These classes were held in a cozy hall of the local cultural center, where the walls were decorated with the works of local artists, and on the stage there were motivational speeches of successful entrepreneurs. Among the participants was Jason himself, a young writer who now not only documented the events that were happening, but also actively participated in the discussions, bringing a fresh look at the future of the city. His notes, later published in the city magazine, became a kind of chronicle of a new era of Lakeport, an era where kindness, determination, and cooperation were in the first place. Every day, the social movement gained momentum, and Lakeport was turning into a city where every voice mattered and every idea could be the beginning of a big change. Keanu felt that his mission, which began with simple acts of kindness, was gaining a global scale, and he was proud to be part of this great process. He understood that there were still many obstacles ahead, but his faith in the power of the human spirit, the support of friends, and like-minded people gave him the strength to move forward despite all the difficulties. The night in Lakeport became a time of reflection for everyone involved in the movement. Under the stars, on empty streets, people gathered in small groups, discussed the past day, and dreamed of tomorrow, where change would not just be words, but a living reality. Keanu often went out into the streets to personally thank everyone who believed in a better future. His steps, confident and calm, symbolized the continuous flow of goodness that could wash away any barriers if only people decided to act together. Thus continued the struggle for the soul of Lakeport, where each day brought new challenges and new victories. Keanu Reeves became not just a symbol of change, but a real bridge between the past and the future, between dreams and reality. His life, filled with deep meaning and sincere actions, inspired those who were looking for hope in difficult times. And despite all the trials, he knew that the power of determination, faith in goodness, and teamwork can transform not only the city, but also the world around, giving people the opportunity to live in harmony with themselves and others. This chapter in Lakeport's life became the starting point for even greater achievements. The city, which was once a place of oblivion, gradually turned into an oasis of change, where every day was a step towards a new, bright reality. Keanu continued on his way, realizing that every good deed, every sincere smile and word of support is a small but decisive contribution to the common good. And while the stars twinkled over the city, he firmly believed change is possible if people unite, if the heart is open to goodness, and if even the smallest actions can light the fire of hope in the souls of millions. With each passing day, the changes in Lakeport became more and more noticeable. The city, once immersed in a gray routine, was now beginning to transform, and its residents were finding the strength and desire to dream, create, and fight for a better future. Keanu Reeves, whose charisma and endless compassion became a symbol of hope for the locals, continued to lead the people, turning each new morning into an opportunity for accomplishments. This chapter became a turning point in his life and the life of Lakeport. When the idea was born to unite the efforts of all those who are not indifferent to the fate of their city in order to create a real cultural and social center capable of uniting hearts and minds in the fight for justice and prosperity. Mornings in Lakeport began with unusual activity. The streets of the city were no longer quiet, but instead were filled with the sounds of animated conversations, laughter, and the beeps of new projects. Keanu woke up early, as if obeying an unknown calling rhythm of life that dictated the need for him to act and inspire those around him. He often spent hours on the waterfront, watching the sun slowly rise over the horizon, painting the sky in vivid shades of orange and purple. These moments of calm gave him strength and reminded him that after every storm comes a new dawn, and every difficulty is an opportunity to become better. In recent weeks, the efforts made together with local activists have begun to bear fruit. Keanu Reeves initiated the creation of an informal community where not only Lakeport residents, but also people from surrounding towns met. Meetings were held in a rented hall of the local cultural center, where the walls, decorated with paintings and photographs telling the story of the city's past, became a place for discussing ideas and plans for the future. Here, lively discussions arose about how best to preserve historical heritage, while simultaneously creating new opportunities for creative development and entrepreneurship. People shared their success stories, dreams for the future, and even fears associated with change, which so often comes unexpectedly, but always leaves a deep mark on the soul. Keanu couldn't help but notice how these meetings made people feel like they were part of something big and meaningful. He told stories from his life, sharing his experience of overcoming difficulties and showing that the true greatness of a person is measured not by material goods, but by his ability to support others and strive for the common good. His stories were full of sincerity and deep understanding of human nature, which more than once caused tears of gratitude and quiet applause in the audience. His words sounded like faith that change is possible if people are given the opportunity to reveal their talents and support each other. One of the highlights of this period was the organization of the Unity Day Festival, which was conceived as a celebration of Lakeport's cultural diversity. Keanu was the initiator of the idea, bringing together local artists, musicians, poets, and artisans to show that creativity can not only unite people, but also transform entire communities. The festival took place in the city's central square, which was decorated in advance with colorful garlands, posters with inscriptions about friendship and unity, as well as lanterns symbolizing the light of hope in every heart. Throughout the day, the area was filled with the sounds of live music, the laughter of children, and the joyful voices of adults, who with each line of poetry were convinced that the future of Lakeport is built on the foundations of unity and mutual assistance. That same day, Keanu met with city officials to discuss the prospects for further development of the cultural center. Ambitious projects were on the table, from creating a local gallery to organizing masterclasses for young people, teaching crafts, and even launching startup support programs. The meeting took place in a warm, constructive atmosphere, where each participant contributed, sharing their experiences and ideas. Keanu, in his calm and confident voice, reminded everyone present that the main goal is to preserve the spirit of Lakeport, its warmth and history that is passed down from generation to generation. His words gained power when he said that change is possible only when everyone is ready to give a piece of themselves, share their experience, and move together towards a common goal. Despite the overall success and positive expectations, there were those in Lakeport who resisted change. Some residents, accustomed to the old ways, looked at the new initiatives with caution, fearing that the changes would bring more losses than benefits. Keanu understood that change is always accompanied by doubts and fear of the unknown. He himself had faced internal contradictions more than once, when his own soul, filled with dreams and hope, collided with the reality of harsh trials. It was in such moments that he drew strength from the support of friends, from the words spoken at the festival, from the views of people who believed in a better future. He knew that it was not worth stopping, even if the path seemed thorny and unpredictable. In the evening, when the city was slowly sinking into soft darkness, Keanu once again gathered with like-minded people in the cozy hall of the cultural center. This time, the discussion concerned plans for the coming months, how to expand the assistance program for the poor, how to attract funding for the restoration of historical buildings, how to organize regular meetings so that the exchange of ideas does not stop. Each participant in the meeting made proposals, discussed them, and as a result of the collective wisdom, specific steps were born that can turn dreams into reality. Keanu once again reminded everyone that the success of change is measured not by the number of loud statements, but by specific actions that make people's lives better. His inspiring look, his confidence that even the smallest actions can become the beginning of a great revolution, inspired and gave strength to everyone present. There was a spark inside Keanu's heart that kept him going in his moments of doubt. He knew there were still many challenges ahead, but he also saw his efforts beginning to bear fruit, the smiles of grateful residents, the emergence of new initiatives, and, most importantly, the sense of unity that was sweeping through the city. Every time he saw people reaching out to each other, their eyes filling with light after years of hardship, he knew his mission was not in vain. For him, Lakeport had become a symbol of how even the smallest of towns could create the conditions for true prosperity when filled with hearts full of love and hope. That night, sitting in the quiet of his small room, Keanu thoughtfully looked out the window at the flickering lights of the city. He remembered all those moments when his efforts were on the edge, when it seemed that change was impossible and fatigue and disappointment began to take hold of his soul. But every time he met the gaze of a grateful passerby or heard words of support from friends, he realized everything he was doing made sense. His soul was like an ancient lighthouse that did not go out, despite the storms and darkness. And it was this unquenchable spark that inspired him to move on, uniting around him people capable of creating miracles. A new idea arose in his mind, an art installation that would symbolize Lakeport's journey from oblivion to rebirth. He imagined a huge sculpture made from recycled materials that would reflect all stages of change, from the first steps and difficulties to the great celebration of unity. Keanu saw this installation not just as a work of art, but as a living reminder for every resident that change is the result of a joint effort, not an accident. He began discussing the idea with local artists, architects, and engineers, and soon a plan for the project's implementation emerged. Everyone who took part put a piece of their soul into this idea, understanding that art can unite, inspire, and give hope. Thus, step by step, Lakeport gained new life. Each evening became a page in the long chronicle of the city, where each story, each good deed turned into a brick, building the foundation of a new society. Keanu Reeves, remaining true to his convictions, continued to lead people forward, reminding them that even in the most difficult times, the light of hope can break through any darkness. His personal example, his sincerity and love for people became a guarantee that even a small town can become an oasis of change if only its residents open their hearts to goodness and unity. During those long, eventful nights, when Lakeport slowly fell asleep under the stars, Keanu felt his soul fill with new meaning. He dreamed of a future where people would not be afraid of change, where everyone could find their place and be heard. And although there were still trials ahead, he firmly believed that together with the people of the city they would be able to create a real miracle, a city where the light of goodness never fades, and each new dawn brings with it hope for the best. Thus, with the awakening of the soul and the coming of a new dawn, Lakeport began its story of transformation. Keanu Reeves, who had turned from an ordinary man into a symbol of change, continued his path, confidently leading people, inspiring them to accomplishments and reminding them that the most important thing is to believe in the power of unity, love, and hope. And in this faith, like in the quiet whisper of the waves, there was a promise that every good deed, done with sincerity, can change the world, giving it new life and new dreams. It's been a few months since Lakeport began to find its new soul, and every corner of it was filled with a spirit of unity, creativity, and hope. Keanu Reeves, who once worked modestly at the Northern Star restaurant, has become not only a symbol of change, but also a true guide for all who sought light even in the darkest days. The end of this chapter is not a period in history, but a transitional moment when the old gives way to the new, and a past filled with pain and loss becomes the foundation for future achievements. The summer heat was gradually giving way to the freshness of autumn winds, and the city of Lakeport, as if revived from a deep winter hibernation, was waking up from a long sleep. In the central square, where the Unity Day festival had recently taken place, the first tents of a new cultural center were now erected, embodying the dreams and aspirations of local residents. This center became a symbol of how even a small town can turn into an oasis of inspiration and change if every caring person makes an effort to create a better future. Keanu, who held many meetings, workshops, and public events at the center, felt his own life and the lives of those around him transform with each passing day. He watched as new hopes blossomed before the eyes of the residents of Lakeport, as people who had previously lost faith in tomorrow began to dream again and plan for their future. Young people found in the cultural center an opportunity for self-expression, the older generation, a chance to pass on their invaluable experience, and entrepreneurs and public figures, a platform for discussing issues important to the city. On a cool autumn evening, when the city was enveloped in a gentle twilight and the air was filled with the scent of fresh rain, Keanu gathered everyone involved in the changes for a solemn ceremony in the new cultural center. To the sounds of acoustic music and applause from those gathered, he gave a speech filled with gratitude and faith in the future. His voice, calm and confident, sounded like a call for unity, for each of those present to continue to do good, not stopping in the face of new difficulties. He talked about how important it is not to forget that every change begins with something small, with a sincere smile, with a supportive word, with a willingness to extend a helping hand to someone in need. His words found a response in the hearts of all those present. People laughed, cried, hugged, as if in this common impulse they were experiencing one great awakening of the soul. The elderly, the young, families with children, everyone understood that Lakeport was no longer just a geographical point on the map. It became a living organism in which the destinies, dreams, and aspirations of hundreds of people were intertwined, each of whom contributed their part to the common good. Keanu reminded that changes never come by themselves. They are created by people who believe in the best and are ready to go along a difficult path together. His speech was not so much the end of one stage, but a starting point for new achievements, for the birth of ideas that can change the world around. As the evening wore on and the stars began to twinkle one by one across the sky, there was a special magic in Lakeport, the magic of overcoming and rebirth. Every corner of the city, every street, seemed to breathe new life, reflecting the changes that had come about through the mutual support and determination of people. Keanu, walking along the newly lit streets, saw how smiles appeared on the faces of passers-by, how the warmth of their gazes testified to the fact that even in this world full of uncertainty, goodness still has the power to work miracles. During this journey, filled with trials, conflicts, but also incredible support, Keanu understood one important truth. The true power of change lies in the ability of a person to change himself and then become an example for others. He recalled how it all began in a small restaurant, how his simple but sincere actions inspired not only the residents of Lakeport, but also attracted the attention of a wider circle of people ready to take a step towards change. Now, looking back, he saw that every meeting, every difficulty, every joy, and every tear became parts of a mosaic that formed a beautiful picture of a new reality. The new cultural center was more than just a building. It became a symbol of unification, a place where the past and the future met at the intersection of human destinies. Creative workshops were held here, film screenings, lectures, and seminars were organized on issues of social development and personal growth. In this center, everyone could find support, guidance, or simply an opportunity to express their feelings through art. Keanu was often here, helping young people discover their talents, sharing his experiences, and sometimes just listening to the stories of those who found comfort and inspiration in this place. The final ceremony at the Cultural Center became a symbolic end to one important stage and the beginning of a new era for Lakeport. On the stage, decorated with fresh flowers and symbolic elements, Keanu presented memorable diplomas to those who actively participated in the transformation of the city and thanked everyone for their faith, support, and love. His eyes sparkled with emotion, and his voice trembled with the power of his emotions when he spoke about how every change begins with a small thing, and together people can create a real miracle. As the ceremony ended and people began to leave, Lakeport continued to breathe new life. Keanu, standing on the empty stage, felt his mission, which had begun many months ago, take on a new dimension. He understood that although this stage may be ending, the path to a brighter future continues, and each new morning brings with it the opportunity for new beginnings. His heart filled with gratitude that he had been able to be a part of this amazing transformation, that his sincerity and kindness had found a response in the hearts of hundreds of people. That night, under the twinkling stars and the rustling autumn wind, Keanu Reeves paused for a moment to reflect on the journey he had taken. He looked out over Lakeport, which, despite its old wounds, was beginning to heal, at the streets where laughter and joy were returning to homes, and he felt how every kind deed, every word of encouragement, left an indelible mark on this world. He understood that real history never ends. It only moves on to a new chapter, where each person becomes the author of their own destiny, and together, the authors of a great saga of love, hope, and change. Thus, closing this chapter, Lakeport and its residents, inspired by Keanu's example, look to the future with confidence and determination. They know that new challenges, new victories, and perhaps new difficulties await them ahead, but they are no longer afraid of change. Because together they have proven that the power of goodness, understanding, and unity can overcome any obstacles, giving the opportunity to start all over again and create miracles. Keanu Reeves, as a bright beacon on the path to a bright future, continues to lead people, reminding that every story has its end, but also the beginning of a new era where good always wins. And so, as the final chords of the music faded and the lights of the cultural center flickered softly in the night, Lakeport found its new life. It was not the end of the road, but simply the beautiful completion of one stage and the beginning of a new chapter, full of promise, dreams, and endless possibilities for those who believe in the power of unity and the true transformation of human destinies.